Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 1st meeting of the Mount Vernon City School District Board of Education. Mr. McCormick, would you please take the roll? Can't hear you, Rick.
I apologize. I must have hit mute when I minimized the screen to Trustee Red.
Present.
Trustee Turnquist.
Present.
Trustee Crump. Trustee Mitchell. Trustee Patterson. Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee White.
Present.
Trustee Saunders.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Mitchell just joined us. Trustee Mitchell, are you here? Quorum is present, ma'am.
Great. Do we have any communications from the public?
There are no communications this evening.
Okay. Dr. Hamilton, do you have a report?
I do. Good evening, all. Good to see you. I hope that your Thanksgiving was a festive one, in spite of the state-imposed restrictions. I'd like to spend some time this evening during the superintendent's report just to kind of update you on where we are relative to COVID and some recent developments and where we are headed. I spoke with the governor's office over the weekend. We had a call with the county executive Latimer yesterday prior to the governor's press conference, and then we had a post conference meeting as well. So we are anticipating that the governor is going to be changing state designation of COVID zone designations probably tomorrow, but virtually most, if not all of the state will be orange or red. Based on the way numbers are peaking. This will mean, of course, that schools, how it impacts us directly, schools will need to roll out their testing protocols in order to remain open. Now, the governor has recognized that there are some hardships associated with this COVID testing protocol and has made some proposed changes to the order, which would require us to test only 10% of our in-person population instead of 20%. Just looking at sheer numbers and the number of tests that would be needed. So part of what was going on this weekend was trying to gather all that data so that the governor could be informed when contemplating this change in the regulation. So that's something that we expect is going to be going on. Mount Vernon right now is not in a zone a colors designated area. But again, I just think that's just a matter of time before those cases are updated. We have had several cases reported over the last few days, primarily from employees who have almost exclusively actually one or two kids, but primarily staff members who have tested positive. And that has caused us to quarantine some of our buildings, some of our classrooms, or some segment of the school population, either restricting that quarantine to phase 1 students and staff or phase 2 students and staff. Today was much better in terms of reporting than yesterday, but it is a very daunting task associated with all the regulations for each case. So we're monitoring that very closely. The challenge that we have, which I did share with the governor yesterday, is while it is true that cases among students are relatively low in comparison, we're finding that we are having a very difficult time staffing our classrooms. Teachers that are quarantined, for instance, are not symptomatic and may not even be positive, but have to quarantine, are able to work remotely. But of course, we still have to have someone in that classroom in some instances. from my perspective, I really want to keep kids in school. That's the bottom line. I want kids to be in school, and I think kids need to be in school. But we need to make sure that we can staff our buildings, and that's what we are challenged with right now. So far we're good. I can't say that we won't have to revert to remote learning at some point based on our ability to staff. That could happen without a whole lot of notice. So I have advised our staff to be prepared, and our parents to be prepared that that could happen. And they should be prepared accordingly. But my goal again is to remain open. We are looking to roll out our testing protocol. I've asked technology to create a digital consent form for parents just to make it a little easier. Now we have started just to get the ball rolling. I did send out written consent forms to parents prior to the vacation so that we could really get this moving. And of course, we're having a challenge with getting some of those returned. So we think just being able to push it out to your phone and, or email and you click and give consent may get us a higher return rate. So for families, and I do have to further educate our parents on this since this is new information that just came out yesterday. A parent who refuses the test or does not consent to testing, the district does have the discretion to remove that child from in-person instruction and put them on remote instruction. And that is consistent with our plan. In terms of staffing, our staff realizes this is a regulations. The unions understand it is a regulation. So we are expecting complete compliance and cooperation from our staff members as it relates to giving consent. We are in the stages of finalizing an agreement with a third-party vendor who will conduct our testing on site. We will roll out our testing protocol, how students and staff will be selected, when testing will occur. The testing will be on site. Our third party will bill the state or the government for reimbursement. So there's no cost to our parents or our students. This is a little unique to what some of the other districts were able to do. But of course, we've been advocating to make this as seamless as possible. And we are developing a memorandum of understanding. It's currently in attorney review, and we should be able to wrap this up in the next day or so. I was trying to get it on for tonight, actually. But we are in a very good place for being able to roll out our testing protocol, particularly given the amount of time we had to get it together. We also know that staff members are very concerned. They're very, very concerned about notifications that they are receiving. I've been working very closely with the County Department of Ed County Department of Health as it relates to contact tracing. Our principals are sending the forms in with the cases, so that helps us to expedite getting the contact tracing started. I've become pretty well versed in COVID language, so I've been able to navigate and triage most of these cases in conjunction with the Department of Health, but I have not had to wait on them because of the information that I've been able to put in my professional repertoire. So we are going to be ready to roll out testing any day now. We'll probably start at central office. And our parents will be able to, our staff members will be able to go and get their own if they want to. We'll be able to accept that if they go out and get their COVID test by their doctor or health facility in their own neighborhoods, if they choose to. But it is our preference that we will conduct these at the workplace, and it will be a random selection to hit our 10%. Now that 10% is not in writing yet. What we have in the executive order still remains at 10%, I mean at 20%, but we anticipate that this is going to change probably tomorrow. In fact, I understand the governor is supposed to give another address tomorrow. We are also working to make sure our notification system is up to par. I did receive some calls from some staff members. Some got the call, some didn't. Same thing with some parents. So I did have technology, look at that today just to make sure our system was up to date. But I do want to remind our parents and our staff, it is imperative that you notify us when your number changes so that we can change it in our system. Most of the time we find that that's the issue. Parents think we have their most recent number and come to find out we don't, or email address. So that is really important that you remember to do that. And we should probably think of a protocol that we can put in place that kind of sends out reminders periodically, so that parents remember to do that, because it's probably not high on the list of things you think about doing when you get a new phone number, frankly. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Great.
Question.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Dr. Hamilton, when you say, if we say we're in the yellow zone, which schools have to have the 10%? Do you just pick one school, or each school will have to have 10% of the staff and children tested?
Good question. So the designation is by school. And I think I mentioned this last meeting. You could have one school in the yellow zone and 5 schools not, for example. Right. So it's of those schools in the designated zone, 10% of those in-person students. So that number is going to fluctuate. In our case, it's going to fluctuate a little more, even because we are phasing our kids in. So we were tasked this weekend. We had our phase 1 kids were in, but our phase 2 kids were coming in the Monday. So we had to create 2 sets of numbers, and that number will change again when we bring in our phase 3. And also, as it relates to how we count our numbers, it is just the in-person population,
right,
that's staff and students.
Okay.
Dr. Hamilton, so when they do the testing, will it be building by building, or will they do testing in all buildings at once? How is that going to happen?
It will be, we're developing a schedule, and it will be building by building.
And someone asked me, how are they going to do the nose swaps or the mouth swaps? You don't know that yet, do you?
Well, actually, there's a new test out that we are hoping we will have in time. And I understand that they're planning to ship those to the provider. And it's a self-administered nose swab, but you don't have to go all the way up your nostril like the test some of us may have had already. It's been modified so that you don't have to go as deep in your nostrils to administer the test. And you put it in the tube yourself, and it gets turned around very quickly.
But you do that in front of the provider.
You do that in front of the provider, exactly.
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a specific age for children, for a human to be tested?
That's a great question. No, there isn't. We are asked to test 10% of our in-person population. And for us, that will include our preschoolers as well. You know, I have some challenges just philosophically about that. Testing kids that young without a parent necessarily being there. So we may decide to, when we do our random selection, it'll really be random, like virtually just counting off every 10th person or something like that. But we may eliminate our pre-K and maybe even our K students from that count. I don't know if that part is permissible yet, but that's what I'm looking to do. Does New York City have a limitation?
No, there's no limitation, but they do allow the parent to come in.
Yeah.
With the
yeah, I think
preschooler.
we would have to do that too. Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
That could be such a scheduling nightmare. Yeah.
Yes.
It appears to be a nightmare, but it really isn't. I have another question. So what kind of tests will be done with the students? Will it be just the nose?
Yeah, that's what Dr. Hamilton.
Yes. My understanding is our partner is using the nose swab, not the saliva test.
Okay.
So that is my understanding based on the MOU that's currently under review.
And if, just let's say you, when you do the random testing, if there are individuals who are in the school and they say, well, you know, I wasn't picked as a random, can I be tested?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We can absolutely exceed our 10%. In fact, I think it would be good data if we did, if you want to know the truth.
How long does the COVID test last?
They're not time specific, because you can get a test today and get exposed and be negative and be exposed 3 days later. So it's not like the one test is dependent upon the other, or that they run congruent in any way. They are very specific and for capturing data at that instant.
Okay.
I have a
To
question
share,
about-
Miss Trustee Wanda White.
Yes.
I get tested once a month, clockwork. So my phone reminds me, and I go and I get tested the same day, every month, just for that consistency.
Okay.
Dr. Hamilton, what is do we know what our, and maybe Mr. McGrath can help us with this, or Mr. McCormick, do we know what our penetration is with the app? Because I'm thinking if we could, you know, we haven't, I don't know if we've really been pushing it lately, but if we could put these notifications on the app, if more people would use the app, then regardless of their phone number, you know, if they have the app, I'm just thinking.
That's a good point. I don't know. Do we have any analytics on the use of the app?
We have download analytics. I don't know that we have specific analytics in terms of who uses their app. So we can provide the number of downloads.
I would recommend that we do another push right now where communications is so critical, that we do those communications. We promote the use of the app again. I don't think it's something we can just do and then stop doing. And after all the effort you guys put into it, it's a great product. It's very functional. So I just think that's something that we should be doing as part of our communications plan.
Could we let people know what the app is, the name of it, and how they get to it?
Sure. Joe?
Sure. So if you go to either the Play Store or you go to Apple Store, you're going to search for MVCSD. That's the easiest way to find it. You can search for Mount Vernon a couple of ways, but if we find that if you search for MVCSD, it's the first hit.
You can get, you get sports on it. You get announcements. I mean, I would be getting, now I have not been getting the alerts, like the robocalls.
Yeah.
That should be coming on my app, shouldn't it?
You haven't gotten it? You didn't get 5 last night?
I got 5 calls. I didn't get messages on my app though.
Oh, interesting.
Is that another step you have to take in order to?
There is, but I think I've been pretty consistent with clicking, because I'm actually doing them myself.
I got the Pennington one on the 15th. That's the last one I got.
Interesting.
Oh, no,
I'll check that just to see. But I've been hearing that it's some folks aren't getting it for whatever reason, and it could be the Blackboard's overwhelmed too.
Yeah. Well, it's just something to think about, because I find it very useful, and I think
Absolutely.
We were getting phone calls until what, 20 of 10 last night, or quarter to 9, or it was fine. I mean, I knew it was coming. But I think the app is just something that we should be pushing all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Micah.
Oh,
yeah, I also got all the robocalls, but I'm looking at my app right now. I have a notification from Hamilton, but nothing else.
Yeah, so it's not consistent. I think we just should look into that. I just think it's a powerful piece of our communications tree.
yeah.
Trustee Patterson.
Oh, I had another question, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Can we just, I just want to recap, right, for my own benefit and everybody else's benefit. So what we're talking about is currently the governor has an order that says if we hit a yellow or orange, an orange or red zone, we have to do 20% testing. And per your conversations, it sounds like that's going to be dropped down to 10%, which will be a lot easier administratively. Is that 10% of students and 10% of staff separately, or just 10% of every human being in the building?
10% of every human being in the building. 10% of every in-person staff and student.
Right. So once we
something
hit,
else too, my trustee, Omiko, and while you're talking, you reminded me of something else. The number of people who are being tested is, I think I said this already actually, is for that particular, so it's not 10% of our total in-person population, 10% of that particular building. And previously, we had to close if we got that until we got that testing protocol in place. It looks like the new order may give us the flexibility to remain open and give us a deadline by which to have the protocol in place. And it looks like we'll meet or exceed that for sure anyway. We still have this district discretion to close if we find that the data is unmanageable or it's just not a safe place for us to be.
right. And that's what I wanted to just remind everyone and focus on, right? Because what we're talking about is if the community at large receives this designation, what is our obligation to basically confirm that the cases in the school buildings are less than what's going on in the greater community, so that we don't have to, shut down whole buildings if there's no real COVID spread happening in those buildings. But this is totally separate from what we have been doing and will continue to do about individual cases and outbreaks, right? When they happen, we still have the contact tracing. That will continue as long as the pandemic continues. This is something different. We're talking about just a situation where we have to react to, we have no test positive in our buildings, but the governor is saying to schools, take the extra step, do a bunch of testing and make sure that we're not, that we don't have spread that we don't know about if you reach this color designation.
That is correct.
Trustee Patterson.
So 2 quick questions. One question, kind of going back to the notifications. Is there a way to open the notifications that if you are signed up for one school, you get all the schools? Because the concern is that a parent who maybe lives in Lincoln's district, their kid happens to, I don't know, hang out with another kid that goes to Mandela, and they don't know that there's an issue at Mandela, and therefore something else, creates. And the fact of the matter is we're only 4.2 square miles. I would think that maybe it would be something to think about if we could extend it.
Do that. We can actually do, just like we can customize them for customized messages for individual schools, or in some cases even departments. We can do a global announcement. My only concern about that is, like last night, by way of example, people would have been the entire district community would have been getting those 5 calls. And sometimes we get complaints about them. Some people don't want to be bothered with them, frankly. Even people who have kids in the district don't want to be bothered with them. But we can do that. If that's something that we deem is a more effective approach to select all Mount Vernon staff and students, we can do that. We have that capacity.
Or maybe each school could get their own, and then we could do one generic, hey, listen, Mount Vernon, just giving you a heads up, this happened, quick blurt, and then get it out. The second question
one of the
I
things
had,
that we talked about today, Trustee, is pushing it out on Facebook more consistently, because we're seeing that people go there and ask questions, and sometimes the message doesn't get posted instantaneously. So we talked about putting that protocol in place immediately.
I think that's a great idea. The other question I had was, some parents were concerned about giving the district the right to test their child because they felt like their child was going to constantly be the one that gets tested, constantly hitting that 10%, if that makes sense. And then the other 90% who, let's say, didn't give authority to test, again, would then not, they wouldn't test those kids, but you keep, let's say, going back to my kid because I gave authority to test my child.
That's a great question. So ultimately, if you don't sign consent, your child could be moved to remote. But in the instance where this random selection process fails so that it targets Johnny twice, two tests, two samples instead of one. To tell you the truth, the population should be big enough. We may not, especially if we hit our numbers, we shouldn't have to do it that often. But we would make sure that we put a protocol in place so that kids weren't being tested, in my opinion, more than once, and certainly no more often than absolutely necessary to meet that number.
Great, thank you.
I have.
Isn't it, but just what you said earlier.
Wait a
what you
minute,
said-
Trustee Red has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to know, how do they determine who gets tested?
Random.
They're random. We'll just like count off. We talked about that today too. Just count off kids as they come in the building, kids and staff members as they come in the building. So if we're hitting every third person that comes in, they'll get the test, or maybe it'll be every fourth person.
So
Unless you're walking in the building the same position every day on test day, you shouldn't be selected more than once.
but Dr. Hamilton, it's going to be a rapid test, so they'll know instantaneously?
Yes, my understanding is this new test, you get the results back very quickly. It's not the 24 or 48-hour test that we're accustomed to right now. There is this new testing protocol where we're supposed to get, and it's not considered the rapid test. There is a test that is more reliable than the rapid test that gives the results in rapid time.
Okay.
Trustee McOwen.
I just want to ask again, though, if we had, for example, in one building, we had 20 or 25% of the staff tested, does that mean that we'd test no students? Because we'd be over the 10% building wide? Or is it your intention to mix it up randomly?
If they volunteer, do you mean if 25% of the building just voluntarily did their test independently?
Yes.
No, we would have to test. Like we could accept independent tests, but that could not replace the district's obligation to meet that testing requirement, that administered test.
But I guess my question is the regulation, it's specific that we can't just choose staff, right?
Correct.
Or just 2 students. It has to be a mix of all human beings in the building.
Absolutely.
With the only caveat, then you're going to specifically ask if we can exempt preschoolers, maybe.
Exactly. Young preschoolers without a parent.
Right.
And there are some districts, by the way, who are offering like Saturday testing for the younger populations as well, if parents really want to be there. So we may look at that if that becomes an issue for us.
What percentage of the students do we have permissions for at this point? Do we know?
Oh, I didn't. We just started collecting them today, so
Okay.
I don't have them tallied yet.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really good. I'm sure it's all going to change in another couple of days, but we will be standing by. So thank you for that. And thank you for your endless hours of fielding these calls. Hopefully you can get someone else to help you with the contact tracing.
I have one more question.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Hamilton, how does the staff feel about the testing? What's the pulse?
There's mixed feelings about it. There's some staff members that welcome it, thinks it makes the building safer. I think it gives more security with being there. And there are other staff members that I've heard from that would prefer not to be subject to some health requirement in order to come to work. As a general rule, however, the union's position is they understand this is something that we have to do.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, great. Before, I know we have exec next, but an early exec next, but could we just quickly go through committee reports, take maybe 10 minutes to go through committee reports, and then we'll go into executive session. Trustee Forson, would you like to give your report?
Yeah, sure. Good evening. So I'm excited to be back to school after Thanksgiving break. Already looking forward to Christmas break. So yesterday, my dad he was about to go to work and they called at like 11 and said that he had to come pick up my little brother, my little sister, because there was a case at Grimes. And he was upset because he was about to go to work and the rest of us, like the older ones, were in class, so we couldn't leave and go pick them up. So what can parents expect? Like if there's a sudden event like that again, and they don't have anyone to come pick up their kid, are they going to be provisions in place for the kids to be isolated in a part of a building until 3 o'clock until somebody can come pick them up? Like if the parents can't just run and come pick them up at that time.
So let me just kind of tell you, we want to avoid that. And the anomaly that you're referencing was because we found out last minute that there was a shared staff member in another building. So I generally have a rule of thumb not to send kids home once they are in school without parent notification. But in this case, we discovered that, and I remember the school, but I'll just say Pennington for the sake of argument. A teacher was at Pennington who may have been exposed, and then we later found out, oh, they are also assigned to Edward Williams. And we could not risk not giving them ample notice after we found out, like we did the other students. So that really was an anomaly, because ordinarily we would have caught that the same time the contact tracing started. But in the event that we can't get to a parent and a student has to be in school, yes, there is an isolation room where students can go. We don't want them in isolation room all day, but I do understand that in the situation that you just described, where the parent is already at work, that may be unavoidable.
Next, is it going to be easy? Like, I know we're already in December, but my dad switched from in-person to remote. I don't even think he made it official, but he just said she should stay home because he was so upset about yesterday. Is it going to be easy to go back and forth, or once you pick it, you're stuck for a certain amount of time and then you can go back and forth? How's that going to work?
If you switch from in-person to remote, you have that option. Going from remote to in-person gets complicated because it will depend on if there is space remaining. So far, we haven't had that issue, quite frankly. We've been able to flip parents back and forth because we have had space, because there are a number of people who selected in person who have since changed to remote. So it hasn't been a challenge for us. But as long as there is space, we will consider those requests. Ideally, it should not happen until the end of the marking period. But because we're in this state of flux and notices are coming out, we've been a lot more flexible with that. So it really will depend on how many in-person seats are available. Because if you give up that seat and there's a waiting list, that seat will go to somebody else who wants to get in. But so far, Dr. Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, we have pretty much been able to accommodate all of our requests. Is that correct?
That's correct, with one exception.
Okay.
There's only been one exception. We've accommodated everyone else.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And the last thing, so I'm not sure how the Mount Vernon Hospital, I know that they said it's closing or something like that. All I know of is the health center. But if there was ever a time where a student needed to go to a hospital because of COVID or something like that, how far along is the connection between schools and hospitals?
The connection, the partnership that I'm referring to has nothing to do with hospitalization or emergency health care. It's exclusively for COVID testing. However, the hospital that is here in Mount Vernon has not closed. They actually have remained open. And I think they will be remaining open. Last I heard that potential closure was delayed, significantly delayed. And I actually got that from the mayor. So I don't think that's an issue right now. Mount Vernon does have a hospital that will treat people if they need to be treated.
Great, thank you. That's it.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Trustee Red, do you have anything to report?
Nothing to report, but I just wanted to make it clear to everyone out there that Dr. Hamilton, every day, and sometimes 3 and 4 times a day, sends out robocalls as well as emails to tell everybody what's going on in the schools. And a lot of people are saying that they're not getting the information about who has it. They're saying it's people who have it that we're not talking about. So, I just want Dr. Hamilton to speak on that as well. That's all.
We're not allowed to tell people who has it. And I get that question all the time. Well, who is it? Who is it? And obviously we can't disclose.
No, it's not who is it. They just want to say, they're saying that they didn't even, it's teachers that probably have it that they can't say they have it and all that stuff, you know.
Well, that I don't know. If people, we do totally have to depend on people self-reporting with that. There would be no way we would know if there are people walking around with it, particularly if they're asymptomatic. Of course, we're scanning everybody that comes in the building for fever, for temperature. If they have a temperature, they've been turned away, and we have had that happen. Okay. But I am unaware of anybody walking around in our buildings with COVID. That's one. And two, if you have been exposed based on the contact tracing forms that we receive, people have been notified. Now, there are some people who think they should be notified because they think they know who have it, and it's all conjecture. Again, if Ken Hamilton has it, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get interviewed, and I'm going to name everybody that I've been around. So I'll name everybody in this group, for example. Somebody who's not here, Brenda Crump, for example, may say, well, I didn't get a call. Why didn't I get a call? Because I didn't name you on my form. So that's all we have to go on. The contact tracers would have no way of knowing if I don't put Brenda Crump hypothetically on my list. They will assume that I have completely disclosed anyone that I have been in contact with.
Okay, and where can the people find this information? On like these robocalls you give out every day? It's just on the robocall?
It's on the robocall. It's coming out to email. We'll start putting them on Facebook and pushing them out on the app. Sometimes the app is very limited in terms of how many characters you can put on it. So that's part of the problem, because some of the messages are pretty long. But we can chop them up and try to get them to however many characters are on it. It's very, very small space, though.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think you answered my question, because like I said, I'm getting a lot of that. Well, teachers that have it, that's not saying anything, they're afraid to say it. Y'all not giving up the information, but I think we are.
If they know somebody that's got, we're not gonna walk around and start sticking swabs up people's noses, but if somebody is
it's really nothing you can do. If HIPAA, if somebody is HIPAA.
That's exactly it. And like I said, you can't come to me and say, I think Jeff got COVID. I can't go in and just, test Jeff.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Trustee Saunders.
I don't have any reports per se. I just want to thank Mike Licio and Cynthia for helping out with the food pantry this last we had a food pantry on Tuesday. Over 200 people. And then we did a food distribution from Senator Biaggi, and Mike and Cynthia were very helpful. So thank you guys. Other than that, I don't have anything. I've been having meetings with Homeschool and Columbus, as we mentioned, regarding the name change, but nothing much to report on that yet.
Okay, thank you. Trustee White?
Yes, the building and grounds, we met this Monday past, and I'll start with each school. Mandela, we're going to organize a walkthrough once the elevators are fixed in that building, and we have the state-of-the-art security system in that building too. One push, everything shuts down. Hamilton, their science room is ready and can be used, but there's no heat in there. So if it's too cold, they can't go in, but it's ready. We're waiting for a part for the heat. Mount Vernon High School Culinary Arts Kitchen is just about completed. It should be up and ready and running by January of 2021.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I'm happy for that. Pennington Schools, the 2 to 5-year-old playground is completed. Williams has a brand new head custodian. He's doing a wonderful job. They say the building is very clean now. So we're happy, and I want to go and see that when we're allowed in. But there's a new head custodian there, so I'm happy with that. We talked about work orders, and we found that work orders, some people are complaining that work orders are not being processed, and they're being processed every day. And they're put in categories. What's very important that has to be done right now to what can wait and maybe be done by the end of the week. But there's a 30-day span. And building condition surveys are usually done every 5 years. And it would be 2020 that this building, our building, would have to be done. However, New York State has decided to divide the schools up, and we're not scheduled to do one till 2023. However, because of some of the conditions of our building, we're getting ready to start our building survey now. Hopefully we'll begin by 2021. And that's the end of my report. Any questions?
I think that's great. I was actually thinking it would be great for us to have a list of things that, I know we've completed most of the bond work and we've completed a lot of repairs, but
Yes, right.
I'd love to see a list of, what's still pending in terms of repairs and critical repairs. And then obviously we're going to have a priority list going forward.
Yes, and that's what we're doing now.
That's great. Thank you very much. Trustee Turnquest Jones.
Hey everyone. So tension, stress, pressure, worried, and depressed. These are things that our children are going through, but also our adults, our staff, our parents. And I had an excellent meeting with a dynamic team, Jeff Gorman, Dr. Bennett Conroy, Rachel DePaul, and Jeanette Babbles. I hope I pronounced her last name correctly. And our discussion was about the social and emotional learning that's going on in Mount Vernon City School District. I just want everyone who are listening to know that we must continue having the conversation with our children and with adults in regards to how you are feeling. And it's okay to feel like that. It's okay to be worried. It's right now, unfortunately, it is normal. So, but here are the things that are in place right now. We have Wellness Wednesdays. And I think that adults who are listening should start incorporating that as well, where we have schools where they are doing yoga and breathing techniques. And the students are able to say to the teacher, can I just take a 5-minute break? I told somebody today that I needed a 5-minute break from them. Students are responding to what teachers in Mount Vernon City School District are laying out in regards to social and emotional learning, because it's extremely important. Want you to know that we are partnering. Dr. Bennett Conroy talked about the partnerships that we have here with community. So as far as the Mount Vernon Bureau, Youth Bureau, the Mount Vernon Health Department, as well as Just Inspire, because they did a survey and there were a lot of our youth who were saying that they are depressed. And what are we doing about it? And so they are ahead of the game. And so being proactive instead of reactive is what we are looking at here. I just want you to know that there is a website. I think it's a YouTube that will be really good to watch. It's called Child Mind Institute. And on Child Mind Institute, it's different clips of famous individuals who talk about things that they go through in regards to being stressed out and having some mental health, mental issues. And you would pretty much enjoy it. Some people who you probably follow and and they are talking about the things that they're going through. And we just want to make individuals understand that this is not going to be a movement. This is going to be a moment that we're going through right now. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we address mental health issues. And one thing about COVID, it brought out some things that were just sitting there laying in the bay, and now it's out in the open, and now it's time for it to be addressed. So once again, I want to thank Jeff Gorman, Dr. Bennett Conroy, Rachel DePaul, and Janet Babs for the excellent meeting that we had. And make sure that you talk to your children about what's going on right now in their classes with the social and emotional learning. Don't say to them, what did you learn about social emotional learning? But just talk to them about what breathing techniques they are learning, what yoga techniques they're learning, and what have they been taught to say when they're feeling a certain way. Thank you.
That's great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Trustee McOwen? Okay. Trustee Patterson?
So we had a budget meeting on Monday, and we talked about just the kind of the financial state that we're in right now and cash flow. And we are still owed $16 million from the city, and conveniently enough, we may have to at some point talk about borrowing funds, because we are going to be, if we get a cut, any kind of cut from New York State, we could be in a precarious position. That's not to say we will be, that's an if, but we just don't know what the outcome is going to be of the cut that the governor has threatened. 2, we went over the taxes collected in July, and the number is kind of guesstimate, because some folks pay their whole entire annual tax at one shot, and some pay it in the 2 different, buckets. But give or take, we have we were supposed to collect $124 million in total, which would be $62 million in July. We collected $59 million. So that's 1,005 homeowners, which is about 8.98% of the taxpayers in the city. So just something for everyone to kind of think about. And we're going to be meeting again mid-December. We'll put the date out soon.
Are we going to be getting a, you guys working on a cash flow summary?
We're working on it now, but for the moment, this is all based on the issue is the funding from the state. That's the big. We're supposed to get some in December and some in March, right, Mr. Silver?
Yes, we're supposed to get a large payment in December. We do not anticipate any cut in that payment, and that will be about December 15th. We have no reason to think that will not happen. And then March is the bigger payment, where we do anticipate a cut unless something happens on the federal level before that.
Okay, so do we need to, and are we making provisions for potential shortfall in our first half collections next year because of the virus?
Well, we've actually, we've implemented proactively the cuts recommended by the, not recommended, directed by the board. And so we're in a good place because we did not, we're in a good place relative to that cut, and we've actually exceeded that just so that we would have a cushion. So, I mean, we will look at what those projections might be. I think we're going to be a little better off than we thought relative to state funding from the federal government, and then how that trickles down to schools. I'm kind of hearing that there may be some funds being sent to the states now that we did not anticipate prior to November. So we'll look at that and see. But meanwhile, we will continue. And matter of fact, I talked to Ken today about doing the cash flow analysis.
Great. Well, thank you, Trustee Patterson. I'm glad you guys are on it. We don't want surprises. Trustee
That's why I give the heads up.
Question. Do we?
Go ahead.
Me?
Sure.
Oh, Do we know if some taxpayers paid it right to the city and not to us, their taxes?
Rick, you want to speak to that or you want me to?
I'll take care. So there were definitely a number of taxpayers who had remitted their payments to the city, but we are in regular contact with the comptroller's office, and we have an envelope that goes back and forth every once a week or so, where they'll send us checks that they got on our behalf, and we'll send checks that we got on their behalf.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Trustee Mitchell.
I don't have anything much. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Special thanks to Mike Policio and his assistant, Ms. Patricia, who have been coordinating with me and working with my crazy schedule so that we can continue to finish wrapping up our secondary visits to the buildings that we visited regarding food service issues and things like that. We're pressing the head custodians and the administrators in the buildings to make sure that that the items and instances that we found during our tours originally that we brought forward are being resolved, and we're not just saying, hey, we found a bunch of stuff in October and now here we are in March and nothing was done. So that's the motive of that goal. So excuse me. I'm hoping to be able to tag team with Trustee White. Also, when we start the touring of the buildings in 2021, I want to definitely be a part of that because, as I said before, our schools are definitely, especially our South Side schools, are definitely in need of some good TLC and attention. That's pretty much all I have. As always, big shouts to our parents who are going through an incredible grind right now. And I have students in school right now in our district, and they miss their friends. And yeah, they're going through some serious emotional distress because they can't be around their friends. They can only look at them on the screen, and that's kind of whack. Who wants to do that? And I can't imagine what they're going through sitting around with me all day, sitting all day. And I'm like, are you on Zoom? Why is your camera not on? What are you doing right now? Don't lay on the table. It's all day. So I know it's pretty hectic on our kids. So I'm definitely sympathetic and interested in what Trustee Turnquest Jones was mentioning about our children's mental health and how incredibly crucial it is, because this is something that's never been faced by probably anyone we ever knew before in our lifetime, and probably may never face it again to this capacity because we're taking it on from the brunt of the beginning and every change that comes along. Dr. Hamilton, my family and I were counting how many times we got phone calls last night. We were like almost about to start calling out school names to see which one it was going to be this time. So, but again, yes, thank you so much for again, some of us have kids in this district that are going to school, that are braving the challenge of walking in the building because some of our kids really do need to be in the building. It's not that we're all just sitting home and our kids are in a special bubble because we're on the board or something like that. It's not. Our kids are in the school. Like I said, I have kids in the school. Some of us on the board right now have children in our district who are suffering through this as well. So it's a struggle across. But again, big shouts to parents who actually have no choice but to send their kids to school, wanted us to open schools, and the kids that are struggling through it as well.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. That's thank you, Trustee Mitchell. And just remember, Trustee Mitchell and everyone on the board, that if you are, doing these, going to buildings and interacting with staff, that any directives have to come through. If you're going with Mr. Policio, they have to come through Mr. Policio or Dr. Hamilton. We do not give any directives to our staff. So
none whatsoever. Everything is transparent. Everybody has to know what's going on. I know everything that I have that I'm discussing. I'm venting through everybody, the proper parties, to make sure that there's nothing that's not known.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. My report is just that we have an audit committee meeting on Thursday at noon. It's going to be a Zoom, and we're just going to be having a discussion about the progress we've made with the Envision project, which really needs to get wrapped up. And that's it. So I'd like, we're going to have 2 executive sessions tonight. The first one will, I think, be fairly brief, but I'd like to motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders.
For what purpose?
Second.
All in favor? We'll get to that.
No, but we have
Yeah,
to.
no, I'm asking Rick to tell us for what purpose now.
We are entering executive session this evening for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person or persons, to discuss collective bargaining negotiations with the Civil Service Employees Association, potential litigation, and to receive legal advice from counsel.
How long?
About an hour.
For this first session.
Yes.
Ooh.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
okay, great.
8:30, huh?
Yeah, and then we have the agenda, and then we have another executive session.
Okay.
So we'll just try to move everything along and be focused. All right, thank you very much. We'll see you guys in the public in an hour. Great, may I have a motion to return to public session?
Motion.
Second.
Mitchell,
favor?
trustee.
Okay, let's get to the agenda. Let's get to the business at hand. Our first resolution is Human Resources 5.1. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Saunders? I heard a second.
Second. Any questions or concerns about 5.1? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Are you an aye or an oppose?
I'm an aye. I'm just a slow aye because I had to find the mute button.
Is that like a grammatical thing? Only kidding. A slow aye. Okay, all in favor, aye. So the resolution carries. May I have a motion to approve Human Resources Resolution 5.2?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions about the PBIS resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. A motion to approve Business Office Resolution 6.1.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions about the Business Office resolution? Various elements in that, okay? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve School Improvement Resolution 7.1?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions about this resolution? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve School Improvement Resolution 7.2?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Now the
Abstain? All right, come on, let's get a pulse, everybody. May I have a motion to approve Student Services Resolution 8.1?
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Any questions? Concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve Building and Grounds 9.1?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions about the Buildings and Grounds resolutions?
Did I miss the change order conversation?
We haven't had that.
There's a summary report included at the bottom of the resolution.
Yep.
If your question is not addressed there, we'll be glad to take them now, ma'am.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, the summary was very
At the
helpful.
bottom.
It was very,
Yes,
I
it
thought it was
was.
great.
Yeah.
Somebody didn't do their homework.
I did have a question.
I read the resolutions, which is why I had a question, but Take me a second.
I just had a question about the Mandela, this drainage issue. I remind, this is the thing we've talked about at the last meeting, and now this is finally the cost to that tie-in. Mike? Or Ken?
So I'm looking for Ken Baviello. He did the summary, but he's not visible.
He's in right now. Oh, come on. There he is.
There we are. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so Trustee McGowan, this is resulting from that the drainage structure item that we had begun speaking about at the last meeting. So this includes that tie-in with the temporary piping, as well as the backfill and some concrete work. And it actually also includes some other work related to coordination with the adjacent developer that the site subcontractor had to do along the south edge property line. And that had included some remobilization for them because they had to pause the work that they were in the process of doing at the airport.
When you say the sub along the border, you're saying our neighbor's sub, not our sub?
Nope.
No, our subcontract.
Nope.
Sorry.
Sorry, that was my cat was stealing my iPad.
No problem. Our site subcontractor performed this work, and I was referencing the south edge of our property. That's where the new apartment building development is going up.
But I don't, why are we approving a change order now and incurring costs that benefit our neighbor? Maybe I'm just not understanding this correctly.
So we had to tie into an existing structure at the street. And at the time we were going to do that work, this developer to the south of our site had raised a potential conflict with their work. And we came to a resolution of doing this temporary tie-in so that we could complete our work at the time that we needed to, and continue with our site paving, which was the next step. And we're actually continuing to work with them on coordinating with that tie-in, since we had called for one size piping and we ultimately put in a different size at the time to get the work done. And as I mentioned, we are continuing to coordinate with them as they bring information to us.
So there appears to be that there's going to be an additional tie-in when that manhole has to be moved. And we're working with the city and the adjacent property to actually see whose responsibility that is. The tie-in that we have now is temporary and it is right on the edge of their property. So we are, like I said, we're working with our engineers, the city engineers, and the adjacent property to try to figure out how we're going to move this manhole.
But what's underneath the manhole? Is it a storm basin?
It ties into the storm. Yes, it ties into the stormwater runoff, the stormwater city tie-in. The problem is there's structural stuff around the manhole. Moving a manhole is not the end of the world. However, there's light poles and there's other structures that need to be shored in order to make this move. And we haven't been able to determine whose responsibility that is yet. So like I said, we are working with our engineers, their engineers, city engineers.
You're saying, just so I'm clear, you're saying that years ago, whoever decided to put this manhole down, put a manhole precisely on the line between these two properties?
No, so it's not on the line between the two properties. It's on the far corner. I always forget the name of that street coming down.
North Street, I believe.
North Street, right.
North.
So it's on the corner of North and Gramerton. That's where we tie in our stormwater from the roof drains at the Mandela site. when the old Sal's Deli and whatever was there, it was set back. Their new property comes right in the middle of that manhole. So the question is now the city is pressuring both of us to move this thing, and we're holding firm that maybe it's not our responsibility or it's a shared responsibility. So we are working with that, with all the engineers on a daily basis.
And I realize, Trustee Miko, and one of the aspects of the change order that's on tonight's agenda that's not very clear. When our site subcontractor went to perform our tie-in with our storm lines, they found that the existing lines from the Mandela building had gotten damaged at some point, and they weren't actually connected to that structure anymore. So that was why we had to provide the additional drainage piping to that structure. It was
actually right in the middle of Gramerton Avenue. The pipe had collapsed or was or crushed at some point years ago. So the water just went basically nowhere. And now once we opened it up and had to make a proper tie-in to meet the code, we felt at the time, we thought it was the permanent solution until this property started to be constructed. And you can see it's right at the edge of their building, is right in the middle of this manhole. So it will have to be moved. The question is, who's going to move it?
So you're saying there is no dispute in terms of the surveyors on the property lines. We don't dispute that this structure is somehow partially on their property.
We don't dispute that at all. The only dispute is who's going to be responsible for moving it. And we're hoping that it's a joint venture and the city doesn't only point to us.
Well, there's two costs, right? There's the cost to move it and then the cost to maintain it forever. That's the bigger cost.
I don't much.
Not that there's much maintenance involved here. I understand.
But there was a crushed pipe, so there should have been some maintenance along the way.
Yeah, if it was done correctly.
Decades.
Right.
So the bottom line is, for this change order, I just want to make sure I understand this. For this change order, you're saying that this is work that needed to be done to fix this crushed pipe so that when it rains, the water from the roof of Mandela doesn't start flooding down the side of our building.
Absolutely, 100%.
We need to fix that. I understand that. And all you're saying in the note here, which is what concerned me, is that we have not yet resolved the long-term issue with the neighbor, and that is not being addressed in this change order right now.
That is 100% correct.
All right.
I'm going to mute myself for a second because I don't know if you could hear my son crying.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's okay.
Another person.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, let's all cry. No, are there any other questions? Melissa, do you have, now that you've read the summary, do you have any questions?
Oh, no. Well, I read the summary, but my question was just in regards to, and it was along the lines of what Trustee McOwen was asking in terms of at what point are we in the process of saying this is finished? And why are you talking to me? I was on mute for like 20 minutes. You didn't talk to me. At what point does this end? And at what point are we saying like, all right, this is over. We can expect in terms of a budgetary answer, we can expect that it's going to be finished soonish. But it sounds like it's not soonish.
We're in the process of setting up another coordination meeting with the developer. I actually just sent another email a half hour ago while you guys were in exec. So we expect to at least come to some agreement in the next week or two.
Oh my God.
I'll take it from here, Ken. Yeah, so we have temporarily tied in so we can get the CVO and get the water flowing from the roof. And then within the next, I'd say the next couple of months, we will have resolution on the permanent fix.
But the building is ready to receive people?
100%.
Yes.
And it is receiving people. It's open.
Right. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any other ayes? We need at least 5 people to say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
And Ken, you should feel better because soon they turn out to be like this when they're talking to you when you're on Zooms and stuff, you know? So the crying thing only lasts so long.
Okay, so that concludes our regular business for this evening. I need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
I'd like to say, give a good farewell to Cliff. I think this is his last meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I was just getting ready to jump in and say that.
The bow tie.
Yes.
Where
Cliff,
is?
we wish you all the
Here.
best. We wish you all the
Oh,
best.
in the middle. You're Alice. Cliff, Godspeed. We'll
Thank
miss
you.
you.
It has been an absolute honor and pleasure to work for the district, to serve the students, and to serve the community. And my only hope is that I have left this place a little bit better than where I found it. And I just encourage you all to keep doing the good work that you're doing. Remember to keep the kids as a focus, and Godspeed.
Bravo, my friend.
Yeah, farewell.
Thank
Cliff.
you for everything, Cliff.
Stay close.
Been enough.
Bye,
I will.
Stay close and stay safe.
All right.
Take care.
Okay, so
We're still live.
Yeah, we're still live. Madam President, what's the purpose of the executive session?
It is to discuss the employment history of a particular person.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 We
Do I
don't have
become
to
the
come back
host,
out.
Rick?
So are we adjourning the regular meeting and this
We're
is,
adjourning the public meeting and we're going into the last event of the evening, which is exec. We will not be coming back out.
okay.
So good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night. Be
Good
well.
Good night.
you, everybody.